Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your host, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense.
Welcome back in to the Beyond Pain podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joe Gambino. I am here with the other host, Joe LaVacca. You can find us both on Instagram at Joe Gambino DPT, for myself at Strength and Motion _PT for LaVacca over there. Podcast is on Instagram, Beyond Pain Podcast, and on YouTube, Cups of Joe _PT. Got it this time around, Joe.
Got it. You nailed it. It was perfect.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Short
very
and
good.
sweet. We're back.
All the underscores, all the pages, all that good stuff.
We did it. If you are been listening for a while, we would really love a review. Just take 2 seconds while you're listening here and drop it for us. It really helps the show. Help us get this into more ears, help more people. But let's dive right into it today. We're going to be talking about programming overall. This is going to be really will touch a little bit on rehab, but we'll make this one more kind of performance driven, how you can look at things high level, the different qualities of training that we can kind of go through, and talk maybe a little bit about what happens if you have less time versus more time and how training should go. So I'll let you kind of kick things off. Maybe we'll start with like the overarching view, like when you're programming for somebody, they're closing into their end of rehab and they want to do more performance stuff. Like, how are you starting to like plan out or think about what goes in their program, how you're tying it back into the goals, all of that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it always starts for me with, well, how many days a week realistically are you going to be able to be successful at the gym? And I want to know that right off the bat, because if it's only 1 or 2 days, then I probably need whatever we're going to do to be fairly high intensity. I probably will need to give you a little bit more density or volume in your sets, at least, the very least, to get you stimulated as much as possible, versus someone who's going to have like 3 or 4 days at the gym where we can kind of really maybe spread this notion out a little bit more. So if someone's been training with me, I generally have an idea from a rehab perspective, what they have been doing leading up to this transition to performance. So if they've been, sort of milling around, fairly active, not, coming into this as a training age, as we always said on the show, at absolutely zero, then I'm probably going to want to start them on this like nice 2-day-a-week program, making sure that we probably hit about, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 8 sets in the beginning of push and pull and squat and hinge. And their 2-day program, at least, for me, and I'd love to get your input here, is probably going to really consist of like the first day is going to be like a bilateral position. So it's going to be like a pretty typical squat. And then maybe on day 2, it's a single position leg or squat. And then I'll do that the same way, like with a deadlift, 2 legs on the floor versus 1 leg on the floor, like in some sort of like mixed position. And then your day 1 stuff, I want you to push and pull horizontally. And then on your day 2 stuff, I'm going to have you push and pull probably vertically. If there are extra bits of time for people, depending on what they want to work on, I've had people who want bigger biceps or arms or whatever. I had people who wanted to work on their core a little bit more. People with lower extremity injuries are always like, hey, how can I work in my calf work or my balance work in there? And then that's where I think everyone's ending circuits change up a little bit. So maybe you're trying to chase the pump. We're going to give you a couple of arm days versus someone else who is maybe a runner, has a harder time, sticking to some strength programming just in general. So we're going to give him or her more calf work or more isometric work in different positions or single leg work in different positions. But I think generally starting off, that's how I would initially go about it. 2 days a week is the kind of like minimum I hope, want, expect, desire, need, wish for people to be able to do. So I want to make sure that those programs are kind of neat and clean, hitting the big things, and that people are kind of in and out without doing too much.
Yeah, I think just to like how I would do what you said with like a 2-day split, it's likely going to be, I'm just going to pick like push or pull for lower body. And then like usually I'll just like give you like day 1 would be squat day and pulled like upper body pull and like so knee dominant and pull upper body, and then the second day would then be upper body push and then lower body hinge, and then this way you can just stack volume, and then like I would admit, like you can do density work, you can just like do RPE work, but like it kind of goes back to what you said before, like it has to, like your intensity has to be there. If you're going to be doing like less than hour sessions, or you're only going to be 2 days a week, whenever volume at like the overall volume is cut down, the intensity needs to bump up to match it.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of different ways that you can work programming like that. I just want to find the way where I can get like the most volume to a given area in one session as possible, and then let them just like get after it, so that this way you can make adaptations to it. So that's kind of where my brain goes with that. But I like what you said, like fit it into that person's life, like time, what do they have access to, what equipment do they have access to. Like one thing I tell everybody that I work with, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but my first question is, how much time do you have to devote to training? And then how much time do you have realistically that you can get 100% of your sessions in? Because those two answers are not always the same. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. And I always like to take that second one, especially when starting with somebody, because I want the wins. I want that positive momentum. I don't want to be like, hey, you only did like, someone doing 70% of the work and 100% of the work. The mindset, very different going into the second block, the third block. And that can really make or break someone's like trajectory going forward and seeing progress. So I love that we talked about that, and you talk about goals. I feel like we talk about that in every episode, but those are always the most important things. It doesn't matter, anything we talk about from a programming perspective here doesn't really matter without the context of your goals. So
with that in mind, quick question for you. So with that in mind, right? Like, again, a lot of the things that I've seen or I try to push clients to is like, trying to get to like at least somewhere around like that minimal viable sets of like maybe 8 per week per body part to start off, and then pushing them into like 12 and 16. And that means like, I'm going to do like, if we're going to stick to a 2-day program, then I'm going to end up building up to like 5 sets of 10 squats on one day, 5 sets of 10 squats on my other day. And then if you have an extra third day or fourth day, this is where like you can make more of those gains the more consistently you work out, because you're able to stack the volume and the intensity throughout the week without it being too overwhelming. But do you feel like there is a minimal viable thing that you try to chase with clients and a maximum like, hey, you don't really need much more than this? Or is it kind of case by case?
Yeah, it's case by case because it's goal dependent. Like if like someone's just like, I want to have less pain and I want to like be able to play with my kids or go for a round of golf, that's like, is there, does it matter if it's 8 sets or 6 sets or 10 sets or 12 sets? Like as long as they're like, again, like I'm always like, we're looking at the objectives and we're making sure that we're from like the things that I'm tracking from like an objective testing is moving in the right direction. And then also subjectively, which I also think is objective, but like what they're saying, are they actually feeling the transitions from whatever they are doing in the gym to whatever they want to be able to do? So at the end of the day, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if it's 2 sets or 4 sets or 8 sets or 15 sets. It doesn't matter. If your goal is like, hey, I want a bigger chest or bigger arm, or I want more toned legs, and like we're looking at more like aesthetic, then yeah, we're probably going to need to up the volume as much as we can in order to achieve those things. And it's 2 days a week. I mean, we could probably do some, but I think you're going to be capped at some point. And like nutrition's going to probably have to be pretty dialed in for you to gain any sort of muscle and things like that. That's kind of where my mind is with that. And as far as like stuff like that too, like I like density sets, like just like, hey, here's 15 minutes, here's 2 or 3 exercises. We're not just going to do 3 sets of 10. You're just going to do as much as you can to challenge yourself in that block. And then every single month, every single week after, you're trying to do more. So more load, more reps, more sets, whatever it is, we're building up volume over that time. And that's one really great way to, again, move somebody from like, maybe they're only doing like, they can only really get in like 6 sets for any area of the body. And then all of a sudden, maybe towards the end of that block, they're getting 10 or they're getting 12 because their capacity is getting better. And that should account for the changes that we want to see.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So cool. So we can spread out sets. We kind of have a generic template that we like to use. Now, what about aerobic stuff? The things that we're always taught on social media is that everybody should be doing zone 2, 150 minutes a week, mixing in some high intensity work. How do you go about that with your clients?
Yeah, again, it's so it depends on goals and it depends on kind of like the season. So like when I'm planning for somebody, I do plan out in like longer blocks. I also try to like change qualities over the course of a year. So like say someone's graduating from the rehab stuff and we're like getting to higher level loading, maybe we'll spend, a few months in like a strength block, and then we may move to, depending on goals, like a power block, right? Like we can use some power work, and then maybe we'll move to like energy system work. Like those cycles will lend me to put more and more stuff. So if it's usually like we're working on like strength is the major stuff and we just want to get the heart rate up, then I'm probably going to have more like, maybe sprinkling some hit work or have them do some like higher level, like, zone threes and stuff like that to really kind of get the heart rate up, because we don't have a whole lot of time to kind of dedicate to multiple energy systems, and we want to, get them moving and kind of build that stuff. Again, also depends, like maybe someone doesn't really like that stuff, or maybe they're a runner and they want to, and then we can maybe blend some zone 2, zone 3 running, depending on the person's goals and what they're trying to accomplish, if they have races coming up, whatever that looks like for that person. If we are focusing on energy systems, and I might mix a whole bunch, we may do some really high intensity stuff, like all out efforts, depending, again, goals, that person, what they're trying to accomplish. I would probably pick like a major characteristic over any given month. Like, hey, I want the higher intensity stuff, or maybe we will do some zone 2 because I don't know, they want some weight loss, and maybe they just can't do sprints or high level stuff. So then I think we're going to kind of just like piecemeal here. So again, it kind of comes down to goals, time, right? Things like that. So I will kind of play with those things throughout. But usually, if we're working on other qualities, is you're probably just gonna have like one session throughout the week that's just going to be get your heart rate up. We're gonna get it to spike. You're gonna let your heart rate come back down to you feel like you kind of caught your breath, and then you're gonna go back into the next circle and get your heart rate back up again. So we'll play around with little things like that. I don't do a lot of measurements, so like a lot of the people that I work with, where you're just using like breath, like are you out of breath, or can you the talk test, like can you talk and have a full conversation, like that stuff starts to let me know, like, okay, what kind of zone is somebody in. If you're forced to mouth breathe, then we know you're going to probably be in like, closer to maybe like a zone 3. If you have a full conversation, you're probably going to be in like zone 2. If it's below that, you're probably doing not much. You're down in the zone 1. So it's going to be very, very light, easy cardio, like you're walking. And then if you're like really, really out of breath, then we're going to be seeing like the 4s and the 5s.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it, like we were saying, is really about time. And one of the things that has been buzzing around too in social media in the industry is your VO2 max, right? Which is essentially how well your body utilizes oxygen during strenuous efforts or just day to day. So this is a very low level tactic. So I can talk to you and move my hands and think and, look up some research and all this other stuff. And it's not leaving me out of breath. And to your point, all these different zones, right? I think people are too obsessed with, especially since the dawn of your Garmin watches and your Apple watches, and everybody can look at their heart rate 24/7. And I think that's slowly shifting into a curse rather than a gift. And a lot of my clients now want to do all this zone 2 work because they think it's going to improve their VO2 max. But one of the people I follow online who I'd love to get on the podcast, she might be too big for us, she might be too big of a celebrity, is Alyssa Olnick. And she had this wonderful post last week, or maybe it was this week, but regardless, she was kind of saying how to improve your VO2 max, you can't start by doing all this lower level work because you're just not conditioned enough for that yet. So you have to do your zone 3s and your 4s and your high intensity stuff. And even then, cross-referencing a few things, I just like picked up a little handy dandy guide on VO2 max. A lot of people's VO2 maxes aren't improving because of the zone 2 work. It's improving, or a lot of the research I've seen is on high intensity work over the course of 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks. So I've been trying to relay to clients that, hey, well, if you want this VO2 max, you got to work hard at it. And then when you improve it, that's what makes your zone 2 more accessible. Because I know when I started trying to do this zone 2 work, I would literally start jogging one block. My heart rate would be at 175, and that's what my Garmin would say. But it would cross this threshold so far where I was out of zone 2. So then I'd have to walk again and then get my heart rate all the way back down, start jogging, back up to 170. Then I'd be all pissed off. And then I didn't want to do it anymore. And then by the time I hit like 3 or 4 cycles, my time was up to work out anyway. And I didn't sweat at all. I was just aggravated. So what did I get out of that? So really what helped me and what's kind of helped a lot of clients is, hey, you know what? I'm just going to do the suck. I'm going to do the suck. I'm going to do my minute sprints, my 3-minute sprints, or my 4-minute sprints, or whatever. I'm going to block these out a couple of times a week. And now when I do a zone 2 work because, I'm just feeling a little tired, or it's a beautiful day outside, I want to stay outside. Well, I can. And I can actually be on the phone, or I can actually talk to someone because I've spent time building that up. So I think from your aerobic stuff, everyone, yeah, your 150 minutes is great if you can have the time for that, as well as go to the gym twice a week. But newer research out there is also pushing us to think that your heavier intensity exercises make up for a lot of minutes in your lower sort of like zones. So if you're hitting your zone 4 or 5, I don't know, 10 minutes a week, 20 minutes a week, that might be enough for you. That might cancel out your zone 1 and zone 2, at least for a while, until you can make some time, make some space to really get the benefit there. So I know that was a little long-winded, but I wanted to sort of just throw that out there for you and give the listeners a chance to think about that, and you to retort or accept or whichever you want to go with that.
No, I accept it. Again, right? It's always going back to someone's goals, right? It's if you're just looking increased heart health, it doesn't matter. Like zone 2 is probably going to be great, but at the end of the day, if we're talking about VO2 maxes, you have to elevate the heart rate response. There are like what you're referring to as like the lactate threshold, and there's like
Yep.
another one even after that, the anaerobic threshold, where if you're not exceeding those, you're probably not going to be making major changes to your VO2 max, to like your overall endurance, and things within that nature. So you have to have this combination. It's great. Like, hey, if you're on a time crunch, like go hit your zone 3s, your zone 4s, your zone 5s. You're going to get like an equivalent of doing like a whole bunch of zone 2s. But if you're looking to be able to have like a better VO2 max, better heart health, like lower your resting heart rate, do all those things, like having a layer of like hitting those higher heart rates are going to be necessary. And again, it's not like you're not going to do it all at the same time, right? Like you're going to probably want to plan like, hey, this is going to be where I'm doing like a lot of my zone 3s, my zone 4s, my zone 5s. This is going to be where I'm doing my zone 2s. Like if we're just talking about aerobic work, it's also going to be kind of coinciding with like maybe what you're doing in the gym, right? Like you can't be like, hey, I'm going to like 1 RMs, like really work on strength and then really work like high level, like my zone 5s for cardio, because you're just not going to have enough in any given body part to be able to sustain that. Again, right? Like you just need to pick, hey, if like cardio is like what it is, like these are going to be my higher ones. Maybe training is like, we're going to be working more like GPP and like how do we get you moving good and like all that stuff. And then when we're doing more like the zone 2, zone 3 work, like we're going to have the ability to also work on power and things like that. And we have a whole lot of different ways we can go about that.
Sounds good, brother. All right. Well, we'll leave that one short and sweet. I think this one will probably be around like Christmas time. People are getting busy. People are looking forward to different things. Joe,
It's ready to
thank
plan
you
for the new year and your training.
That's it. That's it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Well, Joe, thank you so much. I love you. Listeners, we love you if you made it this far. And don't forget to come back next week for another exciting episode of the Beyond Pain podcast.